Hi. Okay, I am back to finally getting through this Primal Blueprint. It's probably taken longer to make these videos than actually reading the book. And considering it's so thick, that's saying a lot. Anyway, I've had a lot going on, and I apologize again for taking so long. This is the book we're reviewing. It's the Primal Blueprint, Mark Sisson. And I'm going to go over chapter 3. Again, I don't read the whole book. I just give you highlights that I found interesting, and hopefully you'll find the book interesting. Again, I'll probably copy and paste all of the information that I have on the previous videos of this book from chapter 1 and 2. So chapter 3 is the Primal Blueprint Eating Philosophy. Do these genes make me look fat? And, of course, genes meaning your DNA. All right, so the focus of this chapter is to explain, and I hadn't read it in a while, but it's to explain how low fat versus high protein, high fat, good fats eating. And it just explains to you how insulin works and how your fat burning and how it works. So I just read a little piece that I didn't highlight. However, I had to refresh my brain a little bit because what happens is I do read the information and most of it I retain, but I mostly retain it for myself and I just know what I should or should not eat. And so anyway, insulin, if you can keep your insulin levels at a good, like if you're diabetic, you'll know what I'm talking about, but for people who are not diabetic, when you eat and you get really tired from eating like a regular Western meal, bread, potatoes, whatever you're having with it, and after your meal you get really tired, and that's because your blood sugar is risen really high, which is fine, that's normal. It's how long it takes to recover from that afterwards. So that's your insulin being affected by the food that you're eating. So anyway, the focus of this chapter is just to explain, and I was just talking about it earlier, is that if you try and maintain a low-fat diet, what happens is your insulin levels spike and fall because pasta, bread, potatoes, rice, all of these things, all these grains, raise your blood sugar a lot. And whereas if you eat a high-fat, high-protein diet with a lot of vegetables, again, you got to eat a lot of vegetables with paleo and drink lots of water. So it's about, I try and maintain about an 80-20, 80 being vegetables, 20 being protein, and then just lots of water. So this chapter is just explaining how insulin, if you let it get out of control, your body doesn't really burn the fat, and you eat a lot of like I said, the rice and everything, so your blood sugar goes high. It burns off the blood sugar, the sugar in your blood first. Anything you don't use gets stored as fat. So long as you're eating a low-fat, high-carb diet, then you're going to continually burn off what you eat and store whatever's left over. And so that's when you start gaining weight. Because it would take a lot of exercise. If you do a lot of exercise, though, again, I always tell people do what works for you. So anyway, my first passage out of this chapter that I just explained, this highlight was important to me. The average person can only store a total of about 400 grams, less than 1 pound, of glycogen in liver and muscle tissue. Even a highly trained athlete can only store perhaps 600 total grams. If you frequently empty your liver and muscle cells of glycogen with brief, intense workouts, frequent low-level movement, and structured aerobic sessions, you will become adept at not only burning stored energy, but also replenishing glycogen as well as amino acids whose metabolism is also facilitated by insulin. So essentially what's happening is that you store up a lot of glycogen, like I said, and you can store it in your liver, which is also a fatty liver. But the idea is if you keep moving and you do exercise, because paleo is also about exercise and doing movement, you basically want to turn over your glycogen, whereas people who are inactive or eating high carb meals and then not moving, they're just storing it and it's not getting rotated. It's just getting piled on, and then it turns into fat. So if you eat paleo, then you do want to do large movements and then rotate the inventory, so to speak. So you got to use up your glycogen with with exercise, and then it will just keep cycling, because you don't want really anything stagnant in your body ever. So that's what basically. So I found that interesting that even athletes can only store up to 600, because again their muscles are perfect and they're running like humming like a machine, and even then they can only store 200 more, and then they've got to keep moving as well. So I thought that passage was interesting. And then the next highlight that I have, it says, insulin inhibits the fat-burning enzyme lipase. So fat cells can't release their stored energy into the bloodstream, where the fatty acids could be used as fuel. So not only do you store more fat, the fat remains locked in your storage. So if your insulin's all over the place, then it messes with your ability to use up fat. And again, so you end up storing fat and not using it up, because your body is using the sugar that's readily available rather than using up what you've stored. And we'll try and find, I didn't have very many highlights in this chapter. And but it was, I guess the whole point of it was just to show why you want to keep your insulin levels even as you can. The next passage I have is, bear in mind that while it's obviously preferable to mute insulin spikes and crashes, your diet's total insulin production is the most important element to consider. If you are routinely eating excessive carbohydrates, especially in the context of an inactive lifestyle, even if they come from healthy sources, healthy's in quotes, you will likely gain weight and increase your risk of developing other associated health problems, including oxidation and inflammation. This is the major culprit behind heart disease. So basically it's saying that you can't, like what I said earlier about eating, and then you eat your food, you spike, you pass out after, and then you recover. The more times you do that without doing any kind of exercise or movement, regardless of how fat or thin, I'm hoping the later chapters will have some highlights on that as well. Anyways, if you don't move, even if you're on a high carbohydrate and, as it said, healthy, because we're a little opposite to low fat people, then you're preventing your body from burning fat by keeping your insulin levels all over the place. You want to keep them a little more level. And yeah. All right. Oh, the next passage. What causes heart disease? Hint, it's oxidation and inflammation, driven primarily by poor food choices, excessive insulin production, and all forms of stress all forms of stress in excess, including over-exercising. Now, I don't know if you will go into the exercising thing. I don't want to touch on that too much, because it's coming back to me in my mind about exercise and what Mark says about that. But basically what he's saying is that the gunk is building up in your bloodstreams when you eat a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, and the insulin prevents your body from burning it off, essentially, if you don't keep it under control. So, yeah, sugar and carbohydrates are not good for you at all. Okay, let's see what the next passage says. Cholesterol is needed for making the bile acids that allow us to digest and absorb fats. Cholesterol is converted by UVB energy in sunlight into the all-important vitamin D. You can't survive or thrive without cholesterol. which is why your liver actually makes up 1,400 milligrams a day, regardless of how much foodborne cholesterol you consume or how much you avoid. It's like the plague in your diet. This one reminds me of my dad, because my dad had a big cholesterol problem, and he used to think that it was because of what he was eating. But now, as I've read this book, we produce our own cholesterol. You really need to talk to your doctor about the various cholesterol things that you can look into, because there is good and bad cholesterol, and there are certain ones that you want to look out for. And maybe we'll get into it in the rest of this chapter, because it's sort of coming back to me. And there's little diagrams about cholesterol, but there are certainly some things that you can discuss with your doctor. And again, if you get this book, it's very easy to understand. And I mean, I'm only reading you little passages, but overall it explains everything to you really well. So let's go on to the next passage that I had. And the distinction matters significantly when it comes to gauging your disease risk. If your blood is host to a party of large, fluffy LDL particles carrying plenty of cholesterol in each lipoprotein vehicle. Yes, if you watch previous videos, I believe I explain all of these to you, and if I don't, please comment below and ask any questions, and I will look things up for you. So we'll continue with this. So a lipoprotein is a vehicle, and that carry LDL-C will tend to be high, especially if your triglycerides are also low, even if the actual number of LDL particles is in a healthy range. Meanwhile, if your bloodstream is full of small, dense LDL packing less cholesterol in each lipoprotein, your LDL-C may appear lower, even though the number of particles is dangerously high. In other words, LDL-C can be wildly misleading. Knowing your LDL particle count and whether small or large particles predominate is much more valuable. So it's your LDLs that you might want to. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. So an HDL is nature's garbage truck. So it takes away things out of your bloodstream. And then another passage I have, type 2 diabetes all have elevated levels of both triglycerides and small dense LDL particles. Exercise is one of the cheapest, easiest, and most effective ways to raise HDL. Consuming saturated fat is another. And I know people might have something to say about that. But anyway, the exercise gets your HDLs up, which is the things that take the bad things out of your blood. And we will get to the next passage here. Now it's coming a little clearer in my mind. It's been quite some time since I read this book. Perhaps I should reread it again. So the next highlight I have is a major culprit in high intake of unstable, high polyunsaturated fats from vegetable oils in the diet. High polyunsaturated fats, unincorporated into the lipid layers, are much more prone to oxidation than are saturated fats. Due to vegetable seed oils, high temperature processing methods involve toxic chemical solvents. Combined with these oils, extreme sensitivity to heat, light, and oxygen are essentially a bottle source of free radicals. Dr. Shanahan asserts that the direct and immediate damage that industrial oils inflict at the cellular level makes them literally no different than eating radiation. Wow, I didn't really actually remember that it was that serious, other than I wasn't supposed to eat vegetable oils. Anyways, I sort of remember this, and it's basically vegetable oils are all made from heat. the corn is boiled down or whatever other vegetable, whereas like avocado oil and olive oil and all of those are not heated. They're pressed and the oil is just essentially squeezed out of them. So if you can imagine the oils like a spine, the avocado oils and the olive oils are more like your spine, and they're very solid because no heat has been applied to them. Whereas the vegetable oils have all kinds of different chemical reactions, and I don't have a diagram, but it does show the difference, and it's very unstable. And so that's what makes it a free radical, because the heat changes the food, and that's what the problem is. Whereas pressed oils are much better for you. So moving on to the next highlight that I have. But a much more sensible and safer option is simply to alter dietary and exercise habits and minimize insulin production, thereby preventing excess accumulation of triglycerides in the blood and allowing the cholesterol system to work as intended. So you see what we're saying now. It's like the LDLs can build up, but the HDLs take away the bad stuff. So with exercise, everything is running like a well-oiled machine. So you can see where this chapter is going now that I read all the passages. And the rest of the highlight is, in fact, the combination of low carbs and good fats in primal foods will generally raise your HDL and lower both triglycerides and small, dense LDLs. And then the next highlight I have, a cheaper and more effective anti-inflammatory effect can be achieved for most people by eating foods high in omega-3s or taking fish oil supplements, exercising sensibly instead of chronically, and getting more sleep if you are deprived. So the omega-3s are like the pressed olive oils. Any omega-3, don't get the 369s, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I just remember you're supposed to have omega-3s on Paleo, again, if you wish to follow this. And or fish oil, but just be conscious of where you're getting. It should be cold water oily fishes like sardines and that kind of thing, if the fish oil that you want to take. All right, so then the next passage I have, I strongly urge you to engage in lifestyle modification. After all, there is no side effects or potential compromises to your drug regime when you improve your diet. While concurrently addressing the possibility with your doctor of gradually reducing your dependence on medication based on the ensuing favorable blood tests. And I believe we've reached the end of my highlights, because the end of the book gives you an overview of the chapter and things that has been discussed about the cholesterol and everything. Yes. And just let me quickly page through, make sure I've finished all that, then I'll give a brief recap. Oh, here we go. Here's another one. If you adopt an extremely disciplined approach for the first 21 days to ditch sugar, grains, and bad oils, you will build momentum towards fat adaptation. This will make it easier over the long term to avoid backsliding, and so common among dieters. And I find among primal paleo enthusiasts who try instead of commit. Yes, because you have to be able to commit to it in 21 days, and I have done that when I first started paleo. Okay, yeah, we've reached the end. So basically, this chapter was telling us of how paleo is going to keep our insulin levels even, because insulin regulates your blood sugar, and just from my experience alone with paleo and insulin, when I'm really going on paleo, and again, in the last year, I've slid off and on of it just because I was so ill with complex regional pain syndrome. I was on steroids and a bunch of other things. I admit it's very hard to stay the course. However, when I found that when I'm on paleo fully, I am able to get off my blood sugar pills because the food alone manages to get your blood sugar down. I have recently discovered with getting off the steroids, it's taken me about 2 months. And again, I'm not fully eating paleo, but I am watching what I eat, and I don't eat a lot of junk food as it is. I've managed to get my blood sugar from 28, which normally I don't have a 28. I was horrific. I got it back down to 6, and which is normal. So I hover between, depending on what I eat, of course. I keep it around to 6 to 10, and in those areas, and I find that I feel much more even. I don't get tired after eating, and I just generally feel clearer. So essentially, with all those letters from that chapter, it was a little rough. Again, if you got questions, please feel free to ask. I have the book here. I can quickly look anything up that you're curious about, and I'll answer in the comments below. And we'll get to chapter 4, hopefully sooner than later. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I know it's not a very exciting video, but I hope the information is helpful. All right, take care. We'll see you again. Bye.